The gentle hum of the dryer signaled the end of another load of laundry in the Thompson household. Sarah, a dedicated mother of two, sighed as she pulled out the warm clothes, ready to tackle the never-ending task of folding and putting away. It was a Thursday evening, like any other, filled with the usual routines of family life. As Sarah sorted through the pile of clothes on the bed, separating her items from those of her husband, Tom, and their children, Emma and Jake, she hummed softly to herself. It was a mindless task, one that allowed her thoughts to wander to the weekend ahead and the soccer game Emma was excited about. Picking up one of Emma's favorite t-shirts, a light blue one with a unicorn on the front, Sarah's fingers brushed against something unusual. She paused, her brow furrowing as she examined the fabric more closely. There, across the front of the shirt, was a strange white stain. It was chalky in texture, smeared in a way that didn't look like a typical spill or food stain. "That's odd," Sarah murmured to herself, running her thumb over the mark. It didn't feel like paint, and Emma hadn't mentioned any art projects at school recently. The placement was strange too, as if something had been wiped across the shirt deliberately. For a moment, Sarah considered simply treating it as a stubborn stain and tossing the shirt back in for another wash. But something about it niggled at the back of her mind. It didn't look like anything Emma would typically get on her clothes during her school day or playtime. Setting the shirt aside, Sarah continued folding, her mind now preoccupied with the mysterious stain. As she worked her way through the pile, she found herself paying closer attention to Emma's clothes. To her surprise, she noticed similar white marks on a few other items, a faint smear on the sleeve of a sweater, a small patch on the hem of a skirt. The unease in Sarah's stomach grew. One stain could be dismissed as an accident, but multiple items with the same strange marks. That seemed deliberate, and the thought sent a chill down her spine. Determined to get to the bottom of this, Sarah called out, her voice carrying through the house. "Emma, honey, can you come here for a minute?" As she waited for Emma to appear, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Was Emma getting into something at school she shouldn't be? Was there a problem with the detergent? Or was it something more concerning? The sound of Emma's footsteps on the stairs pulled Sarah from her thoughts. Her daughter appeared in the doorway, her long brown hair slightly mussed from playing, a curious expression on her face. "What's up, Mom?" Emma asked, her eyes darting to the pile of laundry on the bed. Sarah held up the blue unicorn shirt, pointing to the white stain. "Emma, do you know how this got on your shirt? I noticed similar marks on some of your other clothes too." As Sarah watched her daughter's reaction, she saw something flicker across Emma's face. A mix of recognition and, was that fear? The change was subtle, but to a mother who knew her child's every expression, it was unmistakable. Emma's shoulders tensed slightly, and she avoided meeting Sarah's eyes directly. "Oh, that," she said, her voice a little too casual. "I think I just spilled something at school. You know how messy art class can get." Sarah's motherly instincts went on high alert. Emma's response seemed rehearsed, lacking the usual animated explanation she'd give about her day at school. Plus, Sarah knew for a fact that Emma's art class was on Tuesdays, and this shirt had been worn on a Thursday. "Are you sure, sweetie?" Sarah pressed gently. "It doesn't look like paint to me, and I found similar marks on other clothes too." Emma shrugged, her eyes now fixed on a point just over Sarah's shoulder. "Yeah, I'm sure. Can I go back to my game now?" The knot in Sarah's stomach tightened. In that moment, she knew with certainty that Emma wasn't telling her the whole truth. Her normally bubbly, talkative daughter was being evasive, and that worried Sarah more than any strange stain ever could. "Okay, Emma," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice light. "You can go, but remember, you can always talk to me about anything, all right?" Emma nodded quickly and practically fled the room, leaving Sarah standing amid the piles of laundry, the stained shirt still in her hands. As she heard Emma's bedroom door close, Sarah's mind was already racing, trying to piece together what could be causing her daughter's unusual behavior. Looking down at the shirt again, Sarah made a decision. She wouldn't push Emma right now, but she was determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. Whatever was going on with these stains and her daughter's sudden secretiveness, Sarah was going to find out. Little did she know. This unexpected discovery was about to lead her down a path that would shake her family to its core and test her skills as a mother in ways she never imagined. Emma's unusual response. The next morning, as Sarah prepared breakfast for the family, she couldn't shake the unease that had settled over her since discovering the strange stains. She watched Emma closely as she came down for breakfast, looking for any signs that might explain her daughter's odd behavior the night before. Emma seemed her usual self as she poured cereal into her bowl, chatting animatedly with her younger brother Jake about a new video game. But Sarah noticed small things. The way Emma's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. How she kept glancing at the clock as if eager to leave for school. As Tom rushed out the door for work, kissing Sarah goodbye and ruffling the kids' hair, Sarah made a split-second decision. "Emma, honey, why don't I walk you to school today? It's such a beautiful morning." A flicker of something, alarm, passed over Emma's face before she quickly masked it with a smile. "Oh, you don't have to do that, Mom. I can walk with Lily like usual." Sarah's concern deepened at Emma's reluctance. Normally, her daughter loved when they had time for a walk together. "I insist," Sarah said lightly, keeping her tone casual. "It'll be nice to have some mother-daughter time." As they set off down the tree-lined street, Sarah holding Jake's hand while he chattered about his upcoming field trip, she noticed Emma lagging slightly behind. Her daughter's usual bounce was missing from her step, and she kept fiddling with the straps of her backpack. Halfway to school, Sarah decided to broach the subject again. "Emma, about those stains we found yesterday. Are you sure there's nothing more you want to tell me about them?" Emma's step faltered for a moment. "I told you, Mom, it was just an accident at school. Why do you keep asking about it?" The defensive tone in Emma's voice set off more alarm bells in Sarah's mind. This wasn't like her daughter at all. Emma had always been open with her, sharing everything from playground drama to her secret crush on the boy who sat next to her in math class. "I'm asking because I care about you, sweetie," Sarah said gently, "and because I can tell something's bothering you. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Even if it seems scary or embarrassing." For a moment, Sarah thought she saw Emma's resolve waver. Her daughter's lower lip trembled slightly, and she opened her mouth as if to speak. But then, as they rounded the corner and the school came into view, Emma's expression closed off again. "There's nothing to talk about, Mom," Emma said, her voice flat. "I have to go. I'll be late for class." Before Sarah could respond, Emma had given Jake a quick hug and was hurrying through the school gates, soon lost in the crowd of children flooding into the building. Sarah stood there for a moment, Jake's small hand in hers, feeling as though she'd failed some crucial test as a mother. Throughout the day, as Sarah went about her usual routines, grocery shopping, cleaning the house, helping Jake with his preschool crafts, her mind kept returning to Emma. The image of her daughter's troubled face, the uncharacteristic secrecy, the strange stains, it all swirled in her thoughts, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. By the time the afternoon rolled around and it was time to pick up Emma from school, Sarah had made up her mind. She needed to dig deeper to find out what was really going on with her daughter. The Emma who had left for school this morning wasn't the happy, carefree girl Sarah knew and loved. Something had changed, and Sarah was determined to find out what it was. As she waited outside the school gates, Sarah rehearsed what she would say to Emma. She wanted to be supportive, to create a safe space where her daughter would feel comfortable opening up. But she also knew she might need to be firm. To push past Emma's newfound reticence, the bell rang, and children began pouring out of the building. Sarah scanned the crowd, looking for Emma's familiar blue backpack and brown ponytail. When she finally spotted her daughter, her heart sank. Emma was walking alone, her shoulders hunched, her gaze fixed on the ground. This was so unlike her usually sociable child that Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "Emma!" she called out, waving to catch her attention. Emma's head snapped up, and for a split second, Sarah saw naked fear in her daughter's eyes before it was quickly masked. That fleeting expression was enough to confirm Sarah's worst suspicions. Something was definitely wrong. As Emma approached, Sarah knelt down to her level, pulling her into a tight hug. "Hey, sweetheart, how was your day?" Emma shrugged in her embrace. "Fine," she mumbled, her voice muffled against Sarah's shoulder. Sarah pulled back, keeping her hands on Emma's shoulders as she looked into her daughter's eyes. "Emma, I need you to be honest with me. I can see that something's bothering you. Whatever it is, we can face it together, but I need you to talk to me." For a long moment, Emma said nothing, her gaze darting around as if looking for an escape. Then, just as Sarah was about to press further, Emma's lower lip began to tremble. I can't, Mom," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. They said things would get worse if I told anyone." Sarah felt as if the ground had dropped out from under her. Who were they? What had they done to her little girl? 1,000 terrifying possibilities raced through her mind, each more horrifying than the last. Swallowing hard, Sarah forced herself to remain calm. She needed to be strong for Emma now. "Sweetie, listen to me. Nothing bad will happen to you, I promise. But I need to know what's going on so I can help you. Can you be brave for me and tell me what's happening?" Emma's eyes welled up with tears, and she gave a tiny nod. Sarah's heart broke at the sight, but she also felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever was going on, they would face it together. As she led Emma to a quiet bench away from the crowd, Sarah steeled herself for what she was about to hear, knowing that her response in this moment could change everything for her daughter. Digging deeper, with Emma's reluctant agreement to open up, Sarah guided her to a secluded bench in the small park across from the school. As they sat down, Sarah noticed how Emma's hands trembled slightly, and how she kept glancing around as if afraid someone might overhear them. "Take your time, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. "Me and some of the other fourth graders," Emma continued. "But then they started coming over. They said they had a special club, and only the coolest kids could join." Sarah's stomach churned. She'd heard about situations like this before, older children preying on younger, more vulnerable ones. But she'd never imagined it happening to her own daughter. "What kind of club, Emma?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice calm despite the fear building inside her. Emma's lower lip trembled. They called it the Chalk Challenge. They said we had to prove we were brave enough to join." A small part of Sarah felt relief at the mention of chalk. At least it wasn't drugs, or something more sinister. But she knew that emotional manipulation could be just as damaging. "What did they make you do, sweetie?" Tears began to roll down Emma's cheeks. "Oi, they made us rub chalk on our clothes. Said we had to wear it all day without telling anyone. If we did, or if we tried to clean it off, they'd do worse things." Sarah pulled Emma into a tight hug, her own eyes stinging with unshed tears. "Oh, Emma, I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this alone. You're so brave for telling me." As Emma cried softly against her shoulder, Sarah's mind raced. The strange white stains suddenly made sense, but she had a feeling there was more to the story. "Emma," she said gently, pulling back to look her daughter in the eye, "is there anything else they made you do? Anything at all?" Emma hesitated, then nodded slowly. Sometimes it wasn't just chalk," she admitted. "They'd use glue, or make us do embarrassing things. Like bark like a dog in the cafeteria, or wear our clothes backwards." Sarah felt a surge of anger at the older children who had tormented her daughter and the other young students, but she knew she needed to stay calm for Emma's sake. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. You've done nothing wrong, okay? Those older kids are the ones who should be ashamed, not you." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. Are you going to tell the school?" Sarah hesitated. She knew involving the school was necessary, but she also understood Emma's fear of retaliation. "I think we have to, honey. This isn't just about you. Other kids are being hurt too, but I promise, we'll make sure you're safe." As they sat on the bench, Sarah holding Emma close, she knew this was just the beginning. There would be difficult conversations ahead, with the school, possibly with the police, and certainly with the parents of the other children involved. But for now, Sarah focused on comforting her daughter, on rebuilding the trust that had been shaken by this ordeal. She made a silent vow to do whatever it took to protect Emma and to ensure nothing like this ever happened again. As the afternoon light began to fade, Sarah stood up, holding out her hand to Emma. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home. We'll have your favorite dinner tonight." She found nothing unusual, just the typical assortment of school books, crumpled worksheets, and half-eaten snacks. But as she reached into a side pocket, her fingers brushed against something that made her pause. Slowly, Sarah pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. Her heart racing, she carefully unfolded it. What she saw made her gasp softly. The paper was covered in smeared white powder, chalk dust, she realized. But it was the words scrawled across the top that made her blood run cold. Chalk challenge rules. Break them and pay. Below was a list of cruel and humiliating tasks, each more disturbing than the last. Sarah felt sick as she read through them, imagining her sweet Emma being forced to participate in such degrading activities. As she set the paper down, Sarah noticed something else in the bag. A small plastic bag containing what looked like white school glue. The implications hit her like a physical blow. In that moment, Sarah knew she couldn't handle this alone. This wasn't just bullying, it was systematic abuse and manipulation of young, vulnerable children. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd discovered. But before she could dial, she paused. She needed to talk to Emma one more time. She needed to hear the full story, to understand the extent of what had been happening. Only then could she decide the best course of action. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Sarah made her way upstairs to Emma's room. She knocked softly on the door before entering, finding Emma curled up in bed, her favorite stuffed unicorn clutched tightly to her chest. "Emma, sweetie," Sarah said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I know it's late, but we need to talk a little more about what's been happening at school." Emma's eyes widened with fear, and she clutched her unicorn tighter. "Am I in trouble?" Sarah's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's voice. "No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble at all. I just need to understand everything so I can help you and the other kids. Can you be brave for me one more time?" The heartbreaking confession. Emma sat up slowly, her small frame dwarfed by her colorful bedspread. In the soft glow of her nightlight, she looked so young, so vulnerable. Sarah had to resist the urge to bundle her up and shield her from the world. "I found the paper in your bag, Emma," Sarah said softly. "The one with the rules. Can you tell me more about it?" Emma's lower lip trembled, but she nodded. It started with just the chalk," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said it was like a secret club initiation. We had to wear it all day without telling anyone." Sarah nodded encouragingly, even as her heart ached. "What happened next, sweetie?" "If we did it, they said we were in. But then they kept making up new rules." Emma's voice cracked, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. "They made us do embarrassing things, Mom, like wear our clothes inside out, or talk in a silly voice all day, all under the guise of a club." "Emma," Sarah said gently, pulling back to look her daughter in the eye, "did they ever hurt you physically, or touch you in ways that made you uncomfortable?" Emma shook her head. "No, nothing like that. But they said if we ever told, they'd do worse things. They said no one would believe us because we were just little kids." Relief flooded Sarah at Emma's words. At least there hadn't been physical abuse. But the emotional trauma was clear, and Sarah knew it would take time and possibly professional help for Emma to recover fully. "Listen to me, Emma," Sarah said firmly. "What those kids did was wrong, very wrong. It doesn't matter if they're older or if they called it a club. They were bullying you and your friends, and that's never okay." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. Are you going to tell someone?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Yes, sweetheart, I have to. This isn't just about you. Other kids are being hurt too. We need to make sure it stops. Fear flashed across Emma's face. But what if they find out I told? What if they do something worse? Sarah cupped Emma's face in her hands, looking her daughter straight in the eye. Emma, I promise you, I will not let anything bad happen to you. We're going to talk to your teachers and the principal, and they're going to make sure those older kids can't hurt you or anyone else anymore. As Emma nodded, Sarah could see a mix of relief and lingering fear in her eyes. She knew that rebuilding Emma's sense of safety and trust would take time, but this was the first step. Now, Sarah said, tucking Emma back into bed, try to get some sleep. I'll be right downstairs if you need me, okay? Emma nodded, clutching her unicorn close. Mom, she said as Sarah reached the door. Thank you for believing me. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Always, sweetheart. Always. A mother's fear and the call to the police. As Sarah made her way back downstairs, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Relief that Emma had finally opened up, anger at the older children who had tormented her daughter, and a deep, gnawing fear about what could have happened if she hadn't discovered the truth. Systematic bullying that had the potential to cause lasting harm to Emma, and who knew how many other children. With trembling fingers, Sarah dialed the non-emergency police number. As she waited for someone to answer, she tried to organize her thoughts, to present the situation clearly and calmly. Hello, police non-emergency line? How can I assist you? A calm voice answered. Sarah took a deep breath. Yes, hello. My name is Sarah Thompson. I need to report a case of bullying at my daughter's school, but it's more than that. It's organized, and it involves multiple children. The dispatcher's voice became more alert. Can you tell me more about the situation, Mrs. Thompson? Sarah began to explain, her voice growing steadier as she outlined what she had discovered. The strange stains, Emma's confession, the paper with the U rules. As she spoke, she could hear the dispatcher typing rapidly. Mrs. Thompson, the dispatcher said when Sarah had finished, I want you to know that you've done the right thing by calling us. This situation sounds serious, and we'll need to investigate. An officer will be dispatched to your home to take a full statement and collect any evidence you have. Relief washed over Sarah. They were taking it seriously. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. How soon can someone come? We'll have an officer there within the hour, the dispatcher assured her. In the meantime, please don't disturb any of the evidence you found. And Mrs. Thompson, you've been very brave. Your daughter is lucky to have you in her corner. As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt a mix of emotions wash over her. Fear about what would happen next, relief that action was being taken, and a fierce determination to see this through, no matter what. She made her way back upstairs, peering into Emma's room. Her daughter was finally asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in weeks. Sarah's resolve strengthened. She would do whatever it took to protect Emma and the other children from further harm. Back in the kitchen, Sarah sat down to wait for the police. The evidence spread out before her. As she stared at the innocent-looking white stains that had started this whole ordeal, she couldn't help but wonder, how many other parents were out there, oblivious to the silent struggles their children were facing? How many other Emmas were suffering in silence, afraid to speak up? Sarah made a silent vow then and there. Once this was over, she would do everything in her power to raise awareness about bullying, to help other parents recognize the signs she had almost missed. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about all the children who needed someone to stand up for them. As she heard a car pull up outside, Sarah took a deep breath. The next few hours would be difficult, but she was ready. For Emma, for the other children, and for parents everywhere who wanted nothing more than to keep their kids safe, she would see this through to the end. The knock on the door came, firm but not alarming. Sarah stood, squaring her shoulders. It was time to take the next step in this unexpected journey. As she reached for the doorknob, she sent up a silent prayer for strength, for justice, and for a future where no child would have to face what Emma had endured. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil Sarah felt as she prepared Emma for school. The events of the previous night seemed almost surreal in the light of day, but the presence of Officer Ramirez, who had arrived to escort them to the school, was a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. "Remember, Emma," Sarah said softly as they approached the school gates, "you've done nothing wrong. The principal and Officer Ramirez just want to understand what happened so they can help." Emma nodded, her small hand clutching Sarah's tightly. As they entered the school, Sarah could feel the curious gazes of other parents and children. News traveled fast in their small community, and the presence of a police officer was bound to set tongues wagging. Principal Davis met them at the door of his office, his usually jovial face serious. "Mrs. Thompson, Emma," he greeted them, ushering them inside, where a woman in a smart suit waited. "This is Ms. Chen from Child Protective Services. She's here to help with the investigation." Over the next few hours, Emma bravely recounted her experiences to the adults, her voice sometimes faltering, but growing stronger as she went on. Sarah's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's courage, even as it broke at the details of what Emma and the other children had endured. As Emma spoke, Principal Davis's face grew increasingly grave. "I can't believe this was happening right under our noses," he murmured, shaking his head. Officer Ramirez, who had been taking detailed notes, looked up. Unfortunately, Mr. Davis bullies often operate in ways that are difficult for adults to detect. That's why it's crucial we take this seriously and investigate thoroughly. Throughout the morning, a steady stream of children and their parents came through the office. Sarah watched as realization dawned on the faces of other mothers and fathers, the same mix of shock, guilt, and anger she had experienced herself. By lunchtime, a clearer picture had emerged. A group of sixth graders, led by a boy named Tyler, had been systematically targeting younger students for weeks. The chalk challenge was just the tip of the iceberg. There had been other, more insidious forms of bullying as well. "We've identified at least 15 victims so far," Mrs. Chen informed them during a brief break. "It's likely there are more who haven't come forward yet." Sarah felt a mix of relief that the truth was finally coming out, and horror at the scope of what had been happening. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice hoarse from hours of discussion. Officer Ramirez leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "We'll be speaking with Tyler and the other involved students, as well as their parents. Given the organized nature of the bullying and the number of victims, there will likely be serious consequences." Principal Davis nodded, his face set with determination. "Rest assured, Mrs. Thompson, we'll be implementing immediate changes to prevent anything like this from happening again. Increased supervision, anti-bullying programs, counseling for the affected students, whatever it takes." As the day wore on, Sarah found herself in the role of not just Emma's advocate, but a support for other parents as well. She shared her story, the discovery of the stains, her initial doubts, the importance of persistence in getting to the truth. Many parents approached her, thanking her for coming forward, for being the catalyst that brought this hidden issue to light. By the time Sarah and Emma left the school that evening, both were exhausted but felt a sense of cautious optimism. The truth was out, action was being taken, and most importantly, Emma and the other children knew they were believed and supported. As they walked home in the fading light, Emma looked up at Sarah. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think things will be better now?" Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "It might take some time, sweetie, but yes, I think they will. And I'm so proud of you for being brave enough to speak up." Emma's smile, small but genuine, was the first real one Sarah had seen in weeks. It felt like the first ray of sunshine after a long, dark storm. Resolution and moving forward. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity and change at Emma's school. True to his word, Principal Davis implemented a comprehensive anti-bullying program, bringing in experts to train staff and educate students about recognizing and reporting bullying behavior. Tyler and the other students involved in the chalk challenge faced serious consequences. Some were suspended, others transferred to different schools. All were required to undergo counseling and participate in restorative justice programs aimed at helping them understand the impact of their actions. for Emma and the other victims. Peeking into her room, Sarah saw Emma showing off a new friendship bracelet, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Mom," Emma called out, spotting Sarah in the doorway. "Look what Jasmine made for me. We're all wearing them now. It's like our own club, but a nice one." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes at the sight of her daughter's happiness. "That's wonderful, sweetie," she said, her voice thick with emotion. As life at school slowly returned to normal, Sarah found herself becoming more involved than ever in Emma's day-to-day activities. She volunteered for school events, attended PTA meetings, and made a point of checking in regularly with Emma about her experiences and feelings. One Saturday afternoon, as they walked home from Emma's soccer game, Sarah broached a subject that had been on her mind. "Emma, how would you feel about talking to other kids about what happened? Helping them understand what bullying looks like and how to stand up to it?" Emma was quiet for a moment, considering. "You mean, like, telling my story?" Sarah nodded. "Only if you're comfortable, of course. But I think your experience could really help other kids who might be going through something similar." To Sarah's surprise, Emma's face lit up. I think I'd like that, Mom. Maybe if I'd known more about bullying, I would have told you sooner about what was happening." Over the next few months, Emma, with Sarah's support, began speaking at school assemblies and youth groups. Her story, told with a mix of honesty and newfound confidence, touched many. Sarah watched with pride as her daughter transformed her painful experience into a force for positive change. The journey wasn't always smooth. There were still days when Emma struggled, moments when the memories of what she'd been through cast a shadow. But with each passing week, those moments became fewer and farther between. 1 year after the discovery of the strange white stains, Sarah found herself once again sorting laundry. As she folded one of Emma's shirts, she paused, running her fingers over the fabric. There were no mysterious marks, no hidden stains. Just a normal shirt worn by a happy, thriving 11-year-old girl. You'll never guess what happened at school today. Sarah set down the folded clothes and went to greet her daughter, ready to listen, to support, and to celebrate the small victories of everyday life. The white stains that had once caused so much fear were now just a memory, a reminder of the importance of vigilance, communication, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. As Emma launched into an animated story about her day, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had weathered a storm together and come out stronger on the other side. Whatever challenges the future might hold, Sarah knew they would face them as they had faced this one, with courage, honesty, and unwavering love.
Disclaimer: this channel does not support or tolerate any form of discrimination, racism, prejudice, or violation of human rights. The stories presented here are original and created by the author with the aim of promoting reflection, awareness, and dialogue. All content is developed with respect for diversity and the dignity of all people.